Welcome into the WalterPicks Fantasy Football Show. Yet another episode. If you are new, my name is Avery. This is Sam, the CEO of WalterPicks himself. You see the hoodie, you know what's going on. Today, we are talking about the New York Jets, which might not be an exciting fantasy football team.
I'm pumped, man.
But there's definitely some interesting notes that you want to make sure you know for your draft coming up. And if you have not drafted yet, you need to make sure to try out the WalterPicks app. You can sync your live draft, and it'll help you make your best decision at every single round. Try it out. Use code Avery or use code Sam if you want to support the CEO. But starting off with Justin Fields, last year was not a great year by any means. The only positive was that he did have a career high in passing completion percentage, and that might be it.
Yeah, I don't really care about last season, honestly, for Justin Fields. It wasn't really a real season for him. I mean, he didn't start a few games, 6 starts.
Yeah, it was not a lot
last season, and it was a pretty dumbed down offense for the most part. And I think he played in a few games too where he wasn't even starting, didn't even play that many snaps.
Yes.
And we talked about it a bit on the Dolphins episode with Jalen Waddle. And, we've already seen him be a top 12 wide receiver in fantasy. With Fields, we've already seen him be a top 5 fantasy football quarterback. The one full season we've really seen from Justin Fields, he was a top 5 fantasy football quarterback because the rushing is just so OP.
It is true.
In fantasy. And this is another one of those cases too. I know we've mentioned this on the show before, where depending on the platform you're drafting on, the cost to get these guys can be so different. He's going as QB 11 on Underdog right now and QB 17 on Sleeper. I did my first high stakes draft last weekend on Sleeper. Justin Fields was there after the top 10 quarterbacks were off the board. I think he went as QB 12 or QB 13, a little bit ahead of his QB 17 Sleeper ADP because I'm drafting with pretty sharp drafters.
Yeah. But
you can be the last person in your draft and get Justin Fields in fantasy football this year. And that's why it's so hard for me to justify an early pick at quarterback when we have a elite rushing QB. And I'm not saying an elite NFL QB. I'm saying elite fantasy football rushing QB that's available after everyone else in your league is drafted to quarterback.
Yeah.
Pretty consistently. And we've already seen him be a top 5 quarterback in fantasy. And if it doesn't work out, you didn't spend a big pick to get him. It's not going to kill your fantasy season if it doesn't work out. That's why the late round quarterback strategy is definitely still alive and well. It's honestly a pretty low risk, high reward strategy because you can almost always find value later in the draft. I mean, you could pair Justin Fields and Anthony Richardson this season at basically no cost, and both those guys could be top 5 fantasy football quarterbacks with how the rushing scoring works. The Jets might lead the NFL in rushing attempts this year. When you look at the wide receivers that they have and the running backs that they have, I mean, they're after Garrett Wilson, their next 3 best offensive players might be running backs in Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, and Isaiah Davis, who was pretty good in limited run last year too. Braylon Allen's been getting a ton of steam in camp. Before we jump to the running backs here, though, there honestly is several players in this team I'm excited about, despite the team overall maybe not being so exciting in real life. We're talking fantasy football excitement here, not real football. There is a difference. There's overlap, but there's a difference. Are you as bullish about Fields as I am in fantasy and the potential here as a late round QB pick? It seems almost too obvious.
Yeah. So I am 100% a fan of the late round quarterback strategy. There is something to be said about the fact that if your league does trade, it's a lot harder to trade for a better quarterback and upgrade there. If your league does not trade, that doesn't matter either way. But Justin Fields, when he was healthy last season, was a top 10 quarterback in fantasy points per game because of the rushing upside. He doesn't pass a lot. Historically, his pass volume is going to be low, which I think this is a lot worse for the rest of the offense. But for Justin Fields himself, his pass completion and efficiency in the short to intermediate game last year was so bad, so terrible. The good news is that it was a little bit better than Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers, I was not big on last year and was not great. But we'll get into that. But Breece Hall going into the running backs here, he's going around the RB 12, 13, depending on what draft site you're on. I think that's a little bit low, Sam. Do you agree?
Yeah, Breece Hall is definitely a guy I feel pretty good drafting. I feel like I keep bringing him up, honestly, on every episode we do. I know that we're finally on the Jets episode, so we can talk about him a bit more in depth. But yeah, he finishes the running back 18 last year, really kind of fell off a bit down the stretch, especially. And to me, one of the last running backs off the board in fantasy drafts that can be a true league winner if he stays fully healthy, can get a really significant target share. Justin Fields checks it down at actually a very similar, if not higher rate than Aaron Rodgers. This is something Seth pointed out on one of our projections calls recently, but Justin Fields actually checks it down a ton. And then you look at the receivers on this team, and Breece Hall is probably the second biggest receiving threat that they have. So he could be in that Achane, McCaffrey, Kamara range in target share. We've seen him finish in their range in fantasy points per game already in the past. Yeah, I'm pretty in on Breece. Him versus Chase Brown is, to me, like just such a tough decision. I think on past episodes, I'm pretty confidently going Breece. I still think I'd lean Breece over Chase Brown, but Chase Brown's going much earlier in most drafts, and it's getting a tougher call for me there. But after Chase Brown's off the board, like I'm going Breece Hall over Kyron Williams, like very easily.
I would say,
in my opinion, the talent's better and the target potential is better. Maybe the touchdown volume is lower with Fields and just this offense overall, but I think he can overcome that with the receiving work. The Braylon Allen has been getting steamed up a bit too. I don't know if that's reason to be somewhat fearful for Breece Hall. He was an extremely young rookie last year, was not even legally able to drink when he entered the NFL. I think he's 21 now. One of the youngest rookies, I think, like ever. And he was not great last year. He was running back 74 in carries inside the 5. Like this is a big body running back that should be like pretty good in the goal line situation in theory, but we didn't really see it from Braylon Allen last year. Any reason for optimism from you with Braylon Allen, and any concern about Breece with some of the steam that we're seeing for Braylon Allen out of camp?
I don't think Braylon Allen is going to be much more than a handcuff. And if he does so happen to be that, he's going to be the definition of a start-sit nightmare. You don't want to be starting an RB2. Even the RB2s last season, like Jalen Warren's, that were getting a ton of usage, they were still very risky to start. If you're in a deeper league or you just like having your handcuffs, Braylon Allen is going to be a premier guy. But I also don't think it's impossible to say Isaiah Davis is going to be worked in a good amount if Breece Hall were to get injured. Breece Hall, though, he has the receiving upside, which is all that really matters. There is a case to be said that Jalen Hurts is probably going to steal some upside in the red zone.
Justin Fields
is probably going to steal some of those red zone touchdowns.
Yeah, definitely there's some risk for that. We do always see a bit of an efficiency boost in terms of yards per carry for the running backs too, playing alongside these rushing QBs. And again, with just the makeup of this team could lead the NFL in rushing attempts and just wouldn't be that surprising. Probably a pretty smart move, honestly, with how the talent on this team is shaping up. And this is like really the first time we've seen an offense be built around Justin Fields since his best season, or maybe just one season, after that. It's been a little bit since we've seen Justin Fields get like a real chance with an offense built around him. But yeah, I think Braylon Allen has some handcuff appeal. Maybe there'll be a little bit of standalone value, but I think Isaiah Davis is going to be in the mix too in an event where Breece Hall misses time. Like Isaiah Davis might just have a little bit of a role just in general, like we saw a bit last season as well. So yeah, I'm not super excited about Braylon Allen. He is really young. So there's definitely a chance we see him take some steps forward from his rookie season. Like pretty insanely young, like we mentioned.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I don't think too exciting. And we've seen Breece Hall, just one last note on him. He's been a top 8 running back in fantasy points per game in 2 of his last 3 seasons. Last year, he was running back 18 in points per game, so a down year for him. He was running back 18 in points per game. He's getting drafted kind of close to that this year, like running back 13, running back 14. Like to me, he's getting drafted like pretty close to his floor, and his ceiling is close to what the first round running backs have. So yeah, I'm pretty in on Breece Hall this year. Let's go to the receivers here because it's obviously a studs and duds approach here for the Jets at wide receiver. Definitely, a team that's in contention for the biggest gap between wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2. Giants in the mix. We talked about some other teams that are in the mix for that award this season, but the Jets arguably are my top choice for that. Garrett Wilson at wide receiver 1. He's coming off a pretty disappointing season, I would say, playing alongside Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams for the better part of half a season as well. He finished as wide receiver 19 last year, but he's one of the guys this year, like could lead the NFL in target share. I would probably put him in the top 5 in chances to lead the NFL in target share, but he's not going to be top 5 in targets. Again,
I was just about to bring that up.
This team is going to be really run heavy, so not all target shares are created equal, but you can bank still, I think, on pretty good target volume for Garrett Wilson despite that, because the next guy up is going to be Josh Reynolds, who we're projecting as wide receiver 2. Allen Lazard's still on the team. Malachi Corley, who did nothing but fumble at the goal line as a rookie in the one good play that he had. We'll see if he can get involved. Like there's really just a bunch of guys behind Garrett Wilson. Josh Reynolds, I think, is like pretty much a shoo-in for the wide receiver 2 role on this team. And he's like not much more than just a situational deep threat, wind sprint type guy. Any of these other receivers you think that could make some noise, and how are you feeling about Garrett Wilson in fantasy football?
The thing about Garrett Wilson for me is I've wanted to put him in so many draft this guy, must draft. Here's a guy that's going late and is a value for what he is at least. Every single rabbit hole I come down tells me not to do that. I think there's so many cases for why Garrett Wilson should succeed. He's played with Garrett Wilson. He's played with Justin Fields in college at Ohio State.
Got the shower narrative.
Exactly. Yep. You have that there. You see what Justin Fields was able to do in DJ Moore's really successful season. And then you compare the two players. Can Garrett Wilson be that DJ Moore to what Justin Fields had? I think it's completely possible that Justin Fields is just a little better in a new offense, new coaching scheme, just new feel. But Garrett Wilson, again, we're projecting this team to be one of the worst scoring offenses in the NFL. There's not a lot of guys. If you manage as a defense to take Garrett Wilson out of the equation, there's no one else left. You can stack the box against Breece Hall because just Garrett Wilson. And the bad part about that is Garrett Wilson faces some of the most shadow corner coverages this year. I believe 8 matchups. And if you look at last season, the games that Garrett Wilson played with Devontae Adams, he actually was way more efficient because you can't just double Garrett Wilson and take him out of the game. When Devontae Adams was playing last season, I believe Garrett Wilson was averaging 20.2 fantasy points per game. Where you take him out of that number went down to 13.3. It's not great. So if Garrett Wilson is the only receiver and he still has those troubles being the X number one, it's a little bit worrisome, especially considering Justin Fields last year, 26 passing attempts a game, I believe. The year before that was like 30. It's not a lot of volume to go around. Yes, he might go back to what you were saying, be a top guy in target share. But if that target share is only 30 attempts, right, it's not upside.
Similar to what we talked about with the Eagles in their situation, exactly, last year with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, pretty up there in target share, but target volume, pretty down there. And definitely it's a thing to watch out with target share just as a metric. In general, it's why I like, firmly on team air yards when it comes to receiving volume. And I do think Garrett Wilson has like pretty big air yard and volume potential despite the rushing volume here. The rushing volume that we're projecting the WalterPicks app is why we're a little bit behind his ADPs, projecting his wide receiver 18 in the app. He's getting drafted at wide receiver 15 on both Sleeper and Underdog. Right now, he's going like in the 3rd round of drafts, though. He feels like a pretty safe pick to me, where we've seen him, despite being somewhat disappointing last year, like it feels like every season in fantasy, we're just drafting him a little bit ahead of what we want him to be. And then he does take a step forward, just not as big as people wanted. Okay. He was at 12 fantasy points per game his rookie season. Year 2 went up to 13.2. Last year did jump up to over 15 fantasy points per game. So we've seen him get better every year. His target share has climbed every year. I don't think that's going to be different in year 4. He's probably going to take another jump in target share. I mean, he could get 40% target share on this
40 is crazy.
That would he could get near an NFL record of target share with their current makeup of receivers and still not even be top 10 in the NFL in targets, like we keep saying. But yeah, to me that like the talent is just clearly there. Just watching Garrett Wilson,
100%.
Like we don't need to overcomplicate it. Yeah. Extremely talented receiver, capable of getting open. Yeah, it's going to be tough with defenses being able to key in on him. Like you said, definitely makes me like a little bit more cautious. You make many good points there, but yeah, I think the floor is here. Just the target share will be there pretty consistently, and he's just so obviously the best receiver on this team. Justin Fields playing with him in college, I do kind of like.
Yeah, me too.
I think that Fields is just going to have to force him the ball consistently, and that sort of just re-emphasizes that for me. But yeah, where he's going in drafts right now, let's do some guys that are going around him and see how we feel about this. So
there's just such a wide range of outcomes of what's possible.
Yeah, so right now on ESPN, he's getting drafted 1 pick ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. Are you going Garrett Wilson or Marvin Harrison Jr. in PPR drafts?
Marvin Harrison Jr. has been like the biggest talking case of what are we doing with him. I think the potential upside of what could happen is better with Garrett Wilson. He's a better receiver, and he is the only guy to where Marvin Harrison has to deal with Trey McBride. So I think Garrett Wilson is fine there. I would probably rather take a running back, though, all honesty.
Yeah, I mean, last year, Marvin Harrison Jr. was down at 11 points per game. Garrett Wilson was up at 15 points per game. Obviously, 2 players in very different situations. I honestly agree with how we have it in the WalterPicks app right now, where we have Marvin Harrison Jr.'s ceiling is higher. We have him with a top 10 wide receiver ceiling. We don't have Garrett Wilson quite that high, but the floor is way, way safer for Garrett Wilson. And that's how I view it. And So I'm going to go Marvin Harrison Jr. over Garrett Wilson because of that. Like,
there you
I think
go.
the ceiling is just higher for him, and I'm in on the ceiling. And he's in a slightly different situation where it's not just him that defenses can key in on, either in a much better passing QB situation as well. So yeah, I think I would go Marv over Garrett Wilson, which like I feel like heading into this episode, I was like pretty in on Garrett Wilson, but that comparison makes me think I won't take much Garrett Wilson in my drafts because Marvin Harrison Jr. will be there for the most part on almost every platform. Marv is getting drafted before Garrett Wilson on Underdog, which I do think is notable. I think they do have the sharpest ADP, but obviously best ball a little bit different and skews towards the ceiling. So that kind of makes sense. How about Terry McLaurin or Garrett Wilson? Very curious about this one with our Commanders creator and Commanders fan here.
Terry McLaurin, I have gotten so much hate for avoiding. I love Terry McLaurin, but something about me, I'm never going to be biased when it comes to fantasy football takes. It is a completely different game. And 30% of Terry McLaurin's fantasy points came from touchdowns last year. 30% is insane. He can't really go up in receptions. He had a decent amount. He can't go up. 13 touchdowns was second most in the NFL. You get Debo on the roster now. I don't think Terry McLaurin can outperform his ADP to a big enough degree to where I think he's going to be a good fantasy football pick at the ADP.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'd go Garrett Wilson over Terry McLaurin as well. And ESPN is the only platform that has McLaurin ahead of Garrett Wilson right now. Every other platform, Garrett Wilson's ahead by at least a spot. But yeah, Terry McLaurin just barely scored less. He scored just barely more fantasy points per game. Last year, 15.5 for McLaurin, 15.2 for Garrett Wilson. But McLaurin was up at a 16.2% touchdown rate. Garrett Wilson was down at 7.2%. I mean, there's no way he hits 16.2% before. Almost never historically do we see receivers do something like that in back-to-back seasons. He's like up there with James Cook in terms of the touchdown regression category. Not to say that he's going to be bad. He's just almost impossible to match that level of efficiency. So yeah, I think I would go with Garrett Wilson there as well. I'm going to give you just one more here. Jackson Smith and Jigba or Garrett Wilson. Which direction would you go in there?
I want to say, if this is even a hot take, I would go with JSN. But I do not love the signing of Cooper Kupp because they are pretty much the exact same build of wide receiver, both amazing slot guys. And you saw how Sam Darnold ended that last season. It's definitely some red flags. But I think there should be more offensive pass volume with the Seahawks, and JSN would be my answer there.
Yeah, it's super close. And I'm honestly a little surprised looking to all these ADPs. Underdog, the only platform that has Garrett Wilson ahead of JSN. JSN's ahead on every other platform outside of Underdog. That's ESPN, Sleeper, Yahoo, and CBS. So that is honestly a bit surprising to me, at least. I would go JSN over Garrett Wilson. I think that the ceiling for him, similar to the ceiling for Marvin Harrison Jr., is just an ascending young player with like a better pass environment situation than I think Garrett Wilson has. I think just a bit of a higher ceiling, similar floors, honestly, to me though, with Garrett Wilson and JSN. And I am a little skittish on Sam Darnold. Like I want to be in on JSN so bad, but I am so nervous about Sam Darnold and the quarterback situation there with what we saw from him at the end of last season. And yeah, I think JSN's just going to play more on the outside. I'm honestly not too worried about the Cooper Kupp JSN overlap there. It's a bit weird, of a combo. And I'm very out though on Cooper Kupp. Like I refuse to get back on that horse. It just feels very telling that the Rams let him walk.
Exactly.
But yeah, really, really some interesting and difficult wide receiver decisions here. It sounds like I would go JSN over Garrett Wilson.
Yep.
We would both go Garrett Wilson over Terry McLaurin.
Yeah.
And I think we were split on Marvin Harrison Jr. You said Garrett Wilson.
Yeah.
I said Marvin Harrison Jr. That's more of just a floor ceiling
thing.
But I do like kind of all the receivers in this range. And part of the reason I like starting running back as well. I think the last thing to hit on with this team is Mason Taylor, second round pick, tight end. This team let Tyler Conklin walk this offseason. So he's projecting right now for us as the tight end one on this team. Not a ton of competition. They signed Stone Smart, who showed like a little bit of flash last year. Jeremy Ruckert is still on the team. Someone named Zach Kurtz might not make the team. That actually isn't his last name. I don't want to say his last name. You can look that up if you want to see why. But the tight end situation on this team to me is just like it's not that exciting.
It's not
because of the target volume we've already talked about. But like Mason Taylor could be the wide receiver 2 on this team. Like there's a ceiling there. I think down the stretch, always a little hesitant with the rookie tight ends and how slow they often start out. One of the toughest positions as a rookie. But this tight end class was actually pretty good. Mason Taylor was the 10th pick in the second round. So he's definitely worth noting. I don't think he's going to get drafted in almost any league, but maybe a name just to keep a watch out for on a team that is going to need to figure out who their second pass catcher is, maybe third, after Breece Hall. You have any reason to be excited about Mason Taylor?
Not in redraft. If you're in Dynasty, there's probably a reason. But this season, I don't even really consider him as a tight end 2. I'm just leaving him on the waivers until he shows me something.
Yeah, and we're actually pretty far behind his ADP projection-wise because we don't see it as a lock. He's going to be like the clear starter in week 1. It could be spread out a bit. Stone Smart is a capable receiving tight end. We saw it in flashes last year, like I mentioned. But yeah, he's getting drafted. Mason Taylor is tight end 24. Right now, in both Underdog and Sleeper, we got him projected down at tight end 34. I think his ceiling is being a top 20 tight end, but yeah, the ceiling is still it's really not.
It's still low.
It's not a league winning ceiling by any means. Yeah, so I'm not super excited about Mason Taylor either. Just another reason I think to expect a massive target share from Garrett Wilson. Before we wrap up, I mean, what do you think the odds are we see Garrett Wilson break the target share record this season?
I've seen that become a more and more popular take that Garrett Wilson is just going to lead the league in target share. It's possible.
I'm not saying lead the league. I'm saying lead the history of the NFL.
Yes, that's even worse.
in target share.
I'm not getting down with that. I think he can definitely be up there, but Josh Reynolds might have a bigger role. Allen Lazard might have a bigger role than we expect.
I think there's like a pretty real chance we see Garrett Wilson cross that 40% threshold, which I've never seen in my lifetime. So it's definitely at least near.
It is a hot take.
The NFL history all-time record there. But that's a good place to wrap here for the Jets. If you guys are enjoying these episodes, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. We got episodes coming out for every single team.
Yes.
We're talking through every single player. We're going to be reacting to the training camp news, preseason games, all the coach speak coming out. It is the best time of year, man. It's a great time to be alive, talking some New York Jets football. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back super soon.